Hello, Dr. Dan Yachter of My Family, My Mission. And this is Wednesday's news, views, and weekly updates. And I'm very excited to bring you this week's headlines. And of course, each week, what we do on Wednesdays is we review all the news that's fit to print or that's relevant to the health terrain or our health journey together. If you're not part of our group yet, My Family, My Mission, please go there, join the group. All of the articles that I mentioned, I talk about. Good afternoon, CC. Everything that I mentioned on this segment is in the group. There's a lot of very critical content. Yes, I call it critical. You want to know this information to protect your health now and well into the future. Make sure you go there, join, so you can get your hands and minds wrapped around the full content. In this segment, I just kind of gloss over the headlines, give you a little bit of the content, a little bit of the information, but the full articles are in the group. I'm going to be covering those articles. There are several very important ones. And we're going to go back, we're going to backtrack a little bit to the immune system masterclass content regarding nutrition and supplementation, which will help support your immune system, building a titanium immune system. And we're going to do this leading all the way up till the next masterclass, which is in late September, September 23rd, the Healthy Heart Masterclass, held right here at our office, Lake Mary, Elevation Health Lake Mary, 6:30 p.m. on that Tuesday evening. And they're free. The masterclasses are free. So we're going to cover that content. And I want you to stay with us through the entire segment today, because we have a lot of important information. I'm going to dive into the first article that I have here for you, which is a very important one. And it has to do with something we talk about all the time at the master classes. 1 in 3, 33% of all kids in our country are pre-diabetic, which is very disturbing, insane, but not surprising. And I can tell you this one thing: when I out and about in the community, especially when I'm involved with my kids' sports athletics, when I go to their athletic activities, for example, when I go to my son's baseball games and his practices, what are the kids eating? They're eating a bunch of candy and junk and blue and pink and green Powerade, Gatorade, and all this garbage that they're pouring into their bodies that is contributing for certain to this pre-diabetic issue, this epidemic of blood sugar issues. And what this article talks about, some 8.4 million children aged 12 to 17 have the condition. Nearly 1 in every 3 children aged at least 12 have prediabetes, which is considered, once you reach a hemoglobin A1C of over 5.7, you're pre-diabetic. Once you cross 6.5, you're a full-blown diabetic. And there was never such a thing as childhood diabetes. It was called a type 2 diabetes was adult onset diabetes. And now 1 out of every 3 kids is pre-diabetic, and almost all of that is going to turn into full-blown diabetes. It's crazy. So the CDC researchers who put out this information analyzed 2023 results from a long-running national survey and estimated that 32.7% of children aged 12 to 17, or 8.4 million youth, have prediabetes. They came up with the number by looking at kids who had higher than normal blood sugar levels. Just a few more highlights pointed out in this article. Very important information. This goes down in, and I'm just going to kind of get to the conclusion here. But Dr. Samar Hafida, an endocrinologist and representative for the American Diabetes Association, said that the CDC's their updated estimate generally squares with what doctors are seeing: an increase in youth with obesity and elevated blood sugar levels that put them at risk for serious future health problems. It could be that maybe the number is slightly elevated and inflated, but again, for the most part, across the board, medical experts agree that this is a huge problem and the numbers are relatively accurate. It remains unclear what proportion of children with prediabetes will go on to develop full-blown diabetes, but clearly it's a huge percentage, and this is a gigantic problem because when you have prediabetes, you don't have to have full-blown diabetes, but just with prediabetes, you're already having the kids are going to be experiencing the same symptoms that go along with diabetes. I mean, when does the amputation come about with a person with diabetes? When does blindness come about? When does kidney failure come about? Like, one of these things actually start happening because that's what comes about with a full-blown diabetic. Heart disease, or all kinds of horrible complications with diabetes. But here's the thing, it starts happening, growing, developing in the pre-diabetic stage. And again, well beyond, a third of our kids pre-diabetic. That's insane, which means that these horrible diseases are growing in our childhood population. Something must be done. And again, that's why we're constantly giving out information, lifestyle changes that you can implement, integrate. We teach it at the master classes. We put it out through email, postal mail. We put it out through social media constantly. Things that we can do that are within our control, within our reach, that can turn this thing around. And again, if you're a parent, you have kids, it really starts with us as parents. There are so many things that we can do because pre-diabetes or diabetes in our childhood population is 100% preventable. Maybe not type 1, but type 2. This used to be adult onset, only in adults. So again, it's completely preventable, and there's tons that we can do. And when the information gets into the hands of the parents, we have the ability to take control of this problem. And again, it's so much having to do with the diet, movement, get them off the couch, get them away from the video games, get them moving, change the diet, get them adjusted, lifestyle. It goes on and on and on. Lifestyle changes are the key. So a very important article there. Again, the full article is inside of our Facebook group, My Family, My Mission. I encourage you to join there because there is constant information, videos, posts that are in there that will keep you updated, not only on these current events, but information that we're putting out in the master classes, give you access to things that typically only patients of mine have access to, and really that the community desperately needs. Next article, critical article, CC. Carol, who's here. I don't always tell you, but I appreciate all these articles you send to me, all these links. CC is a informational bloodhound, a health resource bloodhound for us all. She's a huge part of bringing in, sending me links and putting posts in the group. She's incredibly helpful, and we appreciate you. And here's another article that she sent me that is about vitamin D deficiency linked to higher risk of early onset dementia. What you want to know about this article, here is the gist of it. Huge cohort study, population study. Some of these studies, 12,000 people. Many of the studies out there, hundreds of thousands of people, involving vitamin D, and it's linked to dementia. And what this talks about here is the overall research showed if your vitamin D was, the researchers associated vitamin D supplementation with a 40% lower incidence of dementia. If you're taking vitamin D, you're supplementing it with it, you're getting the right amount of supplementation, you're keeping your vitamin D optimized, which is definitely over 50. Over 60 is great. 80 to 100 optimized, but again, over 50, but 40% lower incidence of dementia if you're supplementing properly versus the people who took no supplementation. That's the gist of the article. I highly recommend that you get your hands on the complete article. Largest study of its kind. published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA Neurology, identified 15 lifestyle and health risks associated with early onset dementia. The study analyzed information from more than 356,000 people younger than 65 whose data were in the UK Biobank, a large-scale biomedical database and research initiative in the UK between 2006 and 2010. So, largest and most robust study of its kind ever conducted. And so they looked at a lot of different factors. You want to keep your inflammatory levels down. You can measure it through C-reactive protein. CRP is a biomarker that we measure regularly in my office to figure out how inflamed a patient's body is. And some of the other factors outside of vitamin D, spending more time outdoors, eating foods like fatty fish and foods fortified with vitamin D, taking a vitamin D supplementation, eating more fruits and vegetables, fish and whole grains, exercising regularly, limiting alcohol and processed foods, increasing your salt and fluid intake, and very importantly, to keep your mind sharp, eliminate or avoid social isolation. Get out, call friends, get around family, call friends and family regularly, schedule routine face-to-face activities, join clubs or volunteer organizations. Great article. So a couple more, and then I'm going to go into the titanium immune system, building a titanium immune system information. I have information here in front of me on nutrition and supplementation for the immune system. One of the posts that you'll find in the group, My Family, My Mission, is regarding vaccines. There's a lot of commotion going on in the world right now, in our country, especially with RFK Jr. at the helm, running the CDC, the NIH, the FDA. He's the Health and Human Services Director, well beyond 80,000 employees underneath him now. And there's a lot going on in regards to changes to the vaccine schedule. And one of the posts you'll see in my group shows that the decrease in disease over the last century, not attributed to vaccines, the research coming out from the CDC showing that the reduction in disease, the epidemics, measles, whooping cough, diphtheria, pertussis, mumps, rubella, scarlet fever, typhoid. In fact, when the research is looked at, it's shown, not my research and not my opinion, but it's shown that changes in hygiene, improvements in hygiene, sanitation, nutrition, simple things like people back 100 years ago living without heat, suffering and developing disease because they had no heat through the winters. And because of that, immune systems crashing, their bodies becoming damaged, and them being much more prone to developing disease and dying from disease. In fact, all the reports and charts and scientific data that is coming out now through the Center for Disease Control, and now I'll post it online, and I posted it in the group, showing that the radical decrease in communicable diseases attributed to, again, improvements in hygiene, sanitation, nutrition, diet, all these things, not the vaccines. And you'll see it in the group. Get your hands on it. If taking vitamin D will help with not getting dementia, it's easy to do. Again, that's why I'm doing these segments for the community, because most people don't know about these studies. Most people don't know that there's a dramatic decrease in your odds of developing dementia, 40% decrease just by taking a vitamin D supplement. Yeah, getting out in the sun is good. That could also, obviously increase your vitamin D, but not as robustly as taking vitamin D. That's what the studies show. Vitamin D supplementation is necessary. So yeah, I mean, it's so easy. You want to decrease my risk of developing brain disease by 40% by taking a little vitamin D cap every day? Sign me up. I'll do it. Not a problem. So let's dive into the building a titanium immune system masterclass content having to do with nutrition and supplementation. Now, as I get into it, one of the comments I'll make about supplementation. This is my personal clinical opinion. This is kind of my journey, my evolution as a clinician, not only as a chiropractor, but most of you already know that 30 years ago, I got a degree, I was pre-med, chiropractic, and then I went off to, from being pre-med and on my way to medical school, eventually going to chiropractic school, becoming a doctor of chiropractic. But before doing that, at the University of Florida, secured a degree in nutrition. I've been a nutritionist for 30 years. I develop nutrition lines. I do testing in the office. I'm heavily into nutrition, but my evolution as a clinician in regards to supplementation, vitamins, is as time goes on, more and more, I become a minimalist in regards to nutritional supplementation, meaning that when I work with patients, first off, I really try to test first before I recommend supplementation, even with vitamin D. I want to know what their level is and then how much to bring in exactly, bring the number up to sufficiency, know what the marker number is, and then recommend supplementation based upon a precise number. So that's number one. I try not to indiscriminately recommend supplementation unless I know that's the person really needs and then how much they need. And then as time has gone on, one of the things I do in the beginning when I work with people and I develop protocols is I try to, a lot of times the supplement protocols are intensive. They can be intensive in terms of the amount that I give a patient, and also budget-wise. I mean, there's a pretty good size outlay sometimes for some patients. But my goal is always to get to a point where I'm getting the patient to a minimal amount of supplementation. It's crazy what I see in regards to, I call it the shoebox syndrome, where patients come in, many patients who I start working with initially, it is mind-boggling the amount of supplements that a patient takes sometimes. They'll bring in like a box of supplementation. And I'm like, how do you know that you need all this stuff? You probably only need a fraction of it. Not only that, you're wasting a huge amount of money on supplements. So gigantic waste of time, energy, and money. And not only that, if you're taking things you don't need or over supplementing your body, it can and it will make you sick. I've seen patients develop issues and conditions because of the supplements they're taking. The ones that are completely unnecessary, but they're also messing with their biology and creating problems. So there's got to be a science applied to the area of supplementation. Too much can make you ill. You don't want, also like vitamin D, you don't want to overshoot, because if you overshoot for long enough, it can and will cause a problem. So as time goes on, even if I have a big protocol, a robust protocol, a comprehensive supplement protocol with a lot of supplements in the beginning, as time goes on, I tell patients, I want to get you down to the minimal amount of supplementations, leaning way more heavily on foods, even if foods are more deficient now in the nutrients they were 100 years ago. I really would rather have you lean on good sources, organic sources, get to the farmer's market in your community, try to lean more heavily on whole foods for your nutrient resource and your nutrient supply. I don't like hammering people with too many supplements for too long. I don't like it. That's not how I approach my own body long-term. I have, as the years have gone on, become a minimalist in terms of what I give patients. Sometimes if someone's going through a crisis, I will give them, they will have a shoebox of supplements. Maybe if they're trying to get through, like there's like a week, 2, 3, their body's in a crisis. But long-term, I don't like putting patients on a lot of supplements. I don't like doing it for my own body. And it certainly bothers me when people come in and they have I call it the shoebox syndrome, way too many supplements. And again, you do that for long enough, it's going to create imbalance and create sickness. So with that being said, let me finish this up with going through foods that impair, that'll knock the legs out from your immune system, simple foods that will support and feed your immune system. And then I'm going to give you what I have found to be the top immune supporting supplements, and what many of my patients do take long term as part of their foundational supplement protocol. And that's what I always try to get patients to reach, that point where we say, okay, here's your foundational baseline supplements that you need. Everybody needs vitamin D. I feel everybody needs fish oil, EPA. Everybody needs like a good, multi-performance multivitamin, maybe or maybe not a probiotic. Plenty of food sources for probiotics. I typically don't keep people on probiotic supplements long term, unless there are some exceptions. But again, there's some foundational things that we want to get to, and then that's going to be your protocol. And many of the immune supplements that I'm going to mention are typically part of that foundational protocol. So the foods, for example, that impair or kick the legs out from the immune system, certainly white refined processed sugar in sodas, in baked goods, in cookies and crackers, typically your bagged, boxed, canned foods. But I think most people know what refined processed sugar is. There's good unrefined sugar in fruits and vegetables, for example, but there's really bad sugars, candy bars, Mountain Dew, Coke, stuff like that. Other things that impair the immune system: alcohol, being dehydrated, not getting out in the sunlight, not having enough movement, the medications. There are certain medications, well, all medications impair the immune system to some extent, but the big ones are steroids, things like prednisone. I'm not telling you not to take them, but I'm saying antibiotics, reflux medications. These are the really bad actors upon your immune system. Enhancing your immune system: green tea, phenomenal. It actually helps support stem cell production in the bone marrow, which green tea does a lot of things, which, if keeping the stem cells strong, those stem cells differentiate into platelets, red blood cells, but mainly leukocytes or white blood cells. So it keeps your immune system strong. Lemons, bioflavonoids, lots of B vitamins, vitamin C, lemons, ginger, garlic, onions, bone broth. Like feeds like. Bone broth, okay, we want to support the main part of the immune system that we want to support are the stem cells, which are in your bone marrow. The bone marrow is the seat of your immune system. So like feeds like. Eat bone broth. Bone broth has all the vitamins, the minerals, all the things that will feed the bone marrow and the stem cells. Extra virgin olive oil. And of course, you never can leave out apple cider vinegar with the mother. Loaded with B vitamins, antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, probiotics. The murky stuff at the bottom, that's the mother. That's loaded with probiotics. And that can be used topically on the skin as an astringent. When you drink it, it's an astringent for your GI tract. And you could either do it straight, tablespoon shot in the morning, or really most people I find do better with a tablespoon diluted in 12 to 16 ounces. So apple cider vinegar, such a great way to go. And again, first line of defense. Most people don't know this, but your skin is the first line defense of your immune system. That's why burn victims have such a critical problem, such an urgent need to protect them from the environment, because it's so easy for them to get infected because the first line barrier is breached in burn victims. So the apple cider vinegar is a great astringent, cleanser, and supporter of that first line defense, your skin. The supplements, the key supplements involved with immune support, of course, vitamin C, vitamin A, major players. Zinc is critical in bone marrow support, stem cell production, which again differentiates into the white blood cells. So if you want to have a robust supply of white blood cells, B cells, T cells, neutrophils, macrophages, monocytes, basophils, eosinophils, all those major players in the immune system, primarily neutrophils, dendritic cells, those are main players, mast cells, then you want to make sure that your zinc is at a sufficient level. Of course, vitamin D, the main player in immune system strength and supporting bone marrow and stem cell production. And then, of course, in our immune pack, all of the things I just mentioned are contained within our immune pack. It's an immune pack that I designed with my lab. There's another supplement called Immune. That's part of there's vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and then the other capsule in there is called Immune. And Immune contains things like N-acetylcysteine, which protects the lungs from the spike protein. It keeps inflammation down. It helps in T lymphocyte production. It helps reduce the formation of blood clots. It protects you from viral infection, all kinds of great things, protects the lungs. So N-acetylcysteine, quercetin, it contains bioflavonoids, things like rutin. That's a really big one. Bromelain. All of these are incredibly protective for the immune system, prevent blood clots, protect you from the spike protein. So that's all in the immune system or in the immune cap. But the biggest players in there are quercetin, viral protector, and N-acetylcysteine. So those are the major players when it comes to immune supplementation. And we have those in our immune pack that I've created, the Ultraplex Immune Pack. And those are key players many times in the long-term supplementation that I recommend as the foundational supplementation long-term for patients, or just in general for patients or people asking me about truly what is necessary long-term. Once I've dealt with my current issue, what are the 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 supplements at most that I need to be on? And that's really what I gun for. I try to keep patients within like 3 to 5 supplements long-term, if possible. Not always possible, but that's about it. I'm a minimalist long-term. I don't like putting patients on and keeping patients on a bucket load of supplements long-term. I don't like it. I don't think it's necessary. And in fact, I think long-term, if you have the shoebox of supplements, it could create a lot of imbalance. In fact, long-term creates sickness and illness because of the biological imbalance and physiological imbalance it quite possibly can create. So that's our segment for today. I hope you got a lot out of it. This is the news, views, and weekly updates. Dr. Dan Yachter signing off. Everybody have a great Wednesday. Be with you next week. God bless.